Jedi Fallen Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order is a third-person action-adventure exploration game. It is the first of a apparently planned series of EA-produced single-player Star Wars-themed games. The game was released last year, November. It's been received extremely well by critics and fans alike. I really did not ever intend to play this game. I wasn't really super into Star Wars when this was coming out, and I didn't really know this existed. However, my brother Peter did know about it and really wanted it for some reason. Even when he talked about it, I never really thought that I would get into it. It just was a normal game. He bought it, played it through, and kind of just left it. Later I would pick it up and I would get surprisingly sucked in. This game is really good. There's a lot to cover here, so let's get started. Once again, I'm going to start with the music, because it is relatively simple. This is a classic video game soundtrack, where it is almost entirely designed so the player doesn't notice the music. To that extent, it works quite well to provide ambience and a feel for the areas and situations you're in. There are only 2 times when the music is featured enough that you remember. The first is the opening sequence, and then again, the same song when you enter the fighting pit bit. This is such an epic song. Just listen to it. I believe this song is called something that I cannot pronounce, but it's by the Mongolian metal band The Hue. Honestly, despite the song not really being in the game for that long, it's sort of inevitably linked to the game for me now, since it's so epic and it appears in such epic scenes. Honestly, the music overall is good. It's just not a very big part of the game. It mostly just provides sort of ambience. It's not the focus, or even a sort of it doesn't intrude on it specifically stays out of the way. You don't notice it when you play the game. The next part is the gameplay. The gameplay is kind of interesting because you can basically change it at will whenever you want. You can just pause the game and make it easier if you can't beat the enemy. You can just change the difficulty on the spot at any point. However, even if you don't choose to do that, the gameplay is actually pretty interesting. You have to sort of practice when you play it. If you fight an enemy a few times, you can get a feel for the attack timings and have an easier time against that enemy. There are a lot of different enemies with a lot of different attacks, and there are multiple different ways of sort of approaching the fights that break out in the game. The bosses aren't too hard, but they aren't too easy either. I played through the game on medium difficulty, and I had to try probably 2 to 3 times to beat each boss, but it wasn't too bad. In terms of your abilities, you can the ability tree you get access to, and the unlocking of all the different abilities appears relatively balanced. I imagine you can beeline for certain abilities you particularly like to use, but I just use the standard attack, so I didn't really meta game the abilities too much. The internet does always exist. The puzzles in the game. The second part of the gameplay is the puzzles, and they are, in my opinion, not that hard, but I'm better than the average player at puzzles. I saw some people who were apparently taking like hours and hours on end for some of these puzzles, and I didn't spend more than probably 20 minutes on one. The internet does always exist, so you can always look the answers up, but you really don't need to. The puzzles provide a nice sort of contrast to the fighting gameplay, and the two gameplays balance it out. The balance of the two styles really brings out the best in both of them and makes the game better. Overall, I prefer in this game, I prefer the lore and the story and even the cosmetics to a bit to the like actual gameplay, but I'm not really a big fan. Like, I'm not a super big fan of that sort of Dark Souls esque dodging, hitting, blocking mechanic style, but it's not bad. Um, Even if you're less interested in the story and stuff like even if you aren't as interested in the story and stuff like I am, this would still be a decent game for you. The gameplay's still good. Um, in terms of the story and characters, this game is a very pretty good story and quite good characters. The story drives the game along, and it does not really disappoint. There's always a danger when making a game where the player plays a specific character that the player will not be able to see themselves in the main character. Um, but I think the game avoids this splendidly. I didn't have any problem putting myself in the main character Cal's shoes, and the customization options allow you to personalize the character without really changing it too much. The side characters are all well done, nothing really outstanding. I don't think it's quite as good as Undertale, but the main characters are characterized the most. The bosses are not as well characterized, but as you defeat them, you have to defeat all of them. It makes sense that they'd want to focus on the people that stick around. Um, Also, as this is apparently the first in the series, it would make sense that you would focus on the characters that are going to return. Um, the storyline itself makes sense for the most part, and the ending is very good. I don't really need to go into spoiler territory to talk about this. It's just a decent story. It's well executed and plausible given the characters. Really, I feel this game shines better through the sort of references, Easter eggs, and just extra stuff that connects it to the rest of the Star Wars universe. One of the main elements of the game is the main character's ability to sort of receive force echoes from the world around him, which help move the story along, but also provide a lot of sort of in-depth hidden information that you would not see from other games that connect a lot to the Clone Wars and other elements of the Star Wars universe. Um, this is also used very effectively to sort of create the worlds and planets to give life to them that you may not be able to see. There's basically no NPCs in this game, which can be a problem, but with this, it sort of fills in that gap. Obviously, the Clone Wars has a lot of references, given that it only happened 5 years ago in the lore. Um, the game also encourages you to search the world and find all the force echoes and data scans, as well as all the cosmetic items. Um, and while these provide sort of Easter eggish connections, they also provide a lot of tone and feel for the planets. This is also where the music kind of comes back. The ambience and feel of exploring all the different planets in Fallen Order is great. The music, level design, lore bits, and combat end up all coming perfectly together to create sort of the perfect tone for each of the planets. All of the planets are distinct and interesting to run around exploring, and it's not boring to explore through a whole level. The level is well designed, and the lore bits and music and this just the artwork is all great. The graphics are really quite something. In conclusion, this game is pretty great. It's definitely worth your time and money. I've spent between 50 and 60 hours on this game, and I didn't even know about it. I will almost definitely be purchasing the sequel, and this game has, along with my rewatching of all of the Clone Wars, heavily contributed to my returning interest in Star Wars. Without such good single player titles, all the Star Wars games would be multiplayer, like Battlefront and Squadrons coming out, with a lot of EA microtransactions. Um, anyway, this is a good game. I give it a 0.925 out of 1. Expect reviews on the Clone Wars, Rebels, Star Wars Rebels, and hopefully more in the future. I've gotten a lot more into Star Wars after finishing the final season of Clone Wars and playing this and some other things. Um, so in the future, the next video or two will probably be a Clone Wars related one, hopefully, and but then other stuff I'll definitely be getting to. Assuming this video does well.